I'm here with Mark Viso, who is the CEO of Pact, and you've been the CEO for 10 years, right?
9.5.
Well, yeah, on LinkedIn it says 9.7. So
Does it? Oh, I should pay more attention.
I thought I would round up. What brought you to? How did you start getting into the international development, humanitarian assistance world?
Yeah, I mean, just from a chronological perspective, I went to grad school for international relations. I had done a year abroad in Cairo in my senior year, and then did my graduate school here in DC, and then did some internships overseas with Save the Children, in West Bank, Gaza, and Yemen, and then went on from there. But what sort of drove me to this field, because this is all I've done. 28 years of my work life has been in international development, not-for-profits. Is I remember, because I'm reflecting on one of the questions you have here. I always wanted to understand the bigger picture of things. And so how are we all connected? And what was really drawn to things that were different, things that, stimulated curiosity. So that's the international world, right? And then also I always grew up with this, my mother says, a outsized sense of justice. Where that came from. But if you combine those two things, and also being a middle child, always wanted to make everything okay for everybody, you put those three things together, and that's kind of where you end up, international development, working with people who find themselves challenged by poverty and marginalization and trying to make it better for them. So sort of it was a natural thing. I never really considered doing much else.
When at Pact now, where do you see that you're getting to do that? Like, what are the things that you're like, I'm hitting my mark, it's what I had envisioned? Because we don't always get there, right? It's always climbing the hill or pushing the boulder up the hill, or
from an organizational perspective, or just sort of what we're doing, you mean? Either one?
However that means to you. Like, what do you think? Okay, that's the dream, and here's where I feel like I'm getting close, or I'm doing it. Yeah,
I'm not sure that I'm doing it, but I certainly feel pretty good. And I tell you why. I tell people that really Pact, despite the fact that I happen to be, a senior leader here, really as I look at it, this is where I'd want to do this job, where I want to be involved in national development, which is funny because I used to work at World Vision, as you mentioned. And, that's, overall globally over a $2 billion organization. And most of that money is unrestricted. So you can kind of design your own development experience, which is, sort of golden for us in this field, not being donor driven. And yet I'd rather be here than there. And the reason for that is I look at Pact's DNA, which is really about capacity development and local solutions. It's really how we were born 47 years ago. And then, as you mentioned, my 9 years here, having to come and deal with a lot of stuff to finally get to this point, whereas last year we put in place what we perhaps will arrogantly say is a transformational strategy, which really focuses on systemic issues rather than sectoral issues. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a real joy to be able to get a whole organization of 4,000 people in 40 countries oriented around dealing with systems rather than symptoms. And then the other thing that I'm really thrilled about that's getting me to get closer to why I got into this in the first place is we've sort of reconstructed our whole paradigm and are seeing the people that we serve not as beneficiaries or even participants, but shareholders, in a sense that they kind of own what we do. They own the organization. We're taking practical steps in our governance model to put that in place, giving them certain rights and responsibilities. And that's really ambiguous, really unclear, really strange territory, but I think it really gets to what the core of Pact's mission is helping everyone own their future. And so we're kind of, what's really fun where we are now at Pact is seeing all these sort of disconnected, disparate things all coming together in a concerted strategy that people are starting to buy into, and now a year in, kind of making it happen. I tell you what keeps me up are two things. What keeps me up is culture.
Oh, that's a good one.
And the reason why it keeps me up is because you can't put culture on your to-do list and throw resources at it and get it where you want, it's kind of like Jello. The more you grab it, the less control you have over it. And yet, I think it's the single most important determinant of our success. Now, everybody says that, Warren Buffett, everybody. But I certainly, I think it's even more important in a mission-driven organization. And it's funny because I talk to my for-profit friends, fellow CEOs or folks at the World Economic Forum, and they all are envious and jealous that my organization that I work for has a mission. They say, oh, that's what we're trying to do. Everyone can get excited about that, and they make up missions. Procter & Gamble, they got their social, and they think, wow, that's great. It must be so easy to get everybody aligned around culture. I'm like, you don't understand. In a mission-driven organization in our sector, missions become a commodity. Everybody's got one, and everybody assumes you're here for that reason. And it's not ironically, and we have data around this. Ironically, our mission it makes it harder for us to get the type of culture we think we need to actualize that mission. So culture keeps me up. The other thing that keeps me up is I think our business model in our sector is busted. We've used the same business model for 70 years, and if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, by 2030, we've got like a $4 to $6 trillion gap to reach those things, and so more of the same ain't going to get us there. And so I just think our business model is busted, and we've got to figure from inside. We've got to figure out how to fix that because. For us, our shareholders demand it. If you're here to solve poverty and marginalization, it's not about your own organizational welfare or well-being. It's like, you got to deliver that value to those folks that are in poverty, and so we got to fix that thing. Those keep me up.
So let's take the first one. What do you find works with impacting the culture? That it is what getting close to what you envision or what you think it needs to be?
Well, I think, there's lots of things, and there's some things we thought worked and didn't, but the two sort of big things is being intentional about it and measuring it. So I have what I call a Norton Kaplan balanced scorecard. We have 16 targets that govern the health of the entire organization, right? I report it to my board. We have an all-staff meeting every quarter. We all discuss it. It's a 4-hour meeting, and on there is what we call our organizational health. Mm-hmm. And so we put it on there, and we measure it every year, and it's a big report, and it's not about morale. It's not what culture is about. It's not about employee satisfaction, all that's component. It's really we set up what type of culture we want to have, or we think we need to have to achieve our mission, and what kind of culture do we have, and what are the levers. And the instrument we've used is about 32 levers, and we try to look at those. And so one of the things that's being intentional, measuring it, being transparent, and sharing it. I like to say that, the temptation is to think when you're in an organization to think the culture is something somebody else gave the organization. So you can say, oh, if it's their fault. But the culture is nothing more than the thousands of decisions we make individually of how to act and treat each other. Right? Like the playground. That's the culture we have. And so being intentional about it, transparent about it, sharing it, making it everybody's job. I think that goes a long way. And then in a just mechanistic way, we have a group called the Leader of Leaders. So it's 85 leaders around the globe, and we contract with them about what that role looks like. And one of those things is to model our culture. So we say we have these mindsets. We have 9 mindsets, and if you think this way, you'll probably act this way. So we have 4 behaviors that we think are the emblematic type of culture we have. And if you act that way, then Pact achieves its mission, and you feel rewarded for being here. And so we ask these 85 leaders to model that. And so those are a couple things we're finding are having some success.
And what do you do as the CEO? You're the, people are watching you. You're the, I don't know. I was going to say the prow of the ship, but that's probably not right. But every time you sneeze, everybody, checks to see if they're going to get a cold. I don't know your organization. It's just what I'm saying is normal.
I think it's true. You haven't seen our office. Have you seen our office? You haven't seen our office.
I have been there, but years ago.
So our office, maybe we hadn't redone it when you were here, but so my desk is effectively in the hall. I don't have any door or walls.
I've heard that, yeah.
So anything I do, people can see, and that coupled with the fact that I kind of have I hear a bigger personality, and the fact that You know, I make lots of mistakes, generally speaking, throughout the day. All that conspires, and it's not a really good situation. You know, yeah, I think that's tough. I think one of the things that's important is feedback. We try to have, and we're less successful than we should be. You know, we try to have a really open, transparent sense of what we thrive on is feedback, right? And so that can be painful. You know, you get feedback that's really painful, and we get it from different sources. And I like to say, any place we get feedback, no matter how painful it is, or no matter how dubious the source, we're going to take whatever gem we can from it and learn from it. And so that's one of the things that we try to do.
So when you were a new CEO, how did you think that a CEO should be compared to where you are now? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
The way a CEO acts, and now you're like, okay, here's the way a CEO needs to be.
Well, you know, it's funny you say two things. One, back in the day and still true today, I'm just waiting for someone to figure out that I'm not competent or capable for this job. You know, I like to say I like to hire people that are smarter and better than I am, not just at their job but mine, but they don't know it yet. You know that. But that said, I still have the same struggle I had back then. Is I think a lot of us CEOs in the mission field don't think of ourselves as CEOs. We think of ourselves as one of the gang. Right. And certainly that's how I make decisions with my team. It's, you know, we're going to try to come to the best solution. It's going to emerge, and we're going to challenge each other, and the decision will either happen, or if not, we'll decide who's most competent to make it. It's not about being the boss, right? It doesn't work very well. I think that's not a good way to discover new strategy, new territory. But that's tough because not everyone sees it like that. People expect it. Your words as a CEO mean different things coming from somebody else, and I have a tough time realizing that. I still struggle with that, and it gets me in trouble, you know, and it confuses people, right? And so I'm working on it.
I mean, I think that is so common, though. People that I've worked with for years, you know, I said, you said this, and that they're doing that because you said this, and I often hear, but I was just talking.
Yeah, I don't even remember saying that, you know, that type of thing. Yeah, exactly right. It's tough. It's a struggle. You know, you got to be more conscientious about it.
And then you go home if one lives with others, and you're just another schmo at home, or not.
or less than that.
Unless you say something, everybody goes, whatever.
Exactly. You're right.
And so I'm just watching the time. I have two things. You also want to talk about it. So let's go for three things. One, you wanted to just mention about what you learned from your failures. Let's do that because that's also an interesting topic. And a little hard one, I think. It's a little bit hard, I think, to learn from failures. We're not wired that way.
Yeah, I think we're not. You know, I mean, you know, I like to say that, and I sincerely believe this, that I really don't have any skills. I certainly don't have any hard skills. Like, you know, I had trouble even signing into this web conference, right? And I don't have a lot of other skills. And it's very humbling when you look out at the rest of the staff. They have some hard skills. We got MPHs, we got MBAs. You know, I don't have those skills. But a couple of things I pull on is I do like to learn from failure. You know, I am kind of wired that way. I don't know, maybe as a middle child, you always think you're trying to get better because everyone else is better than you, the little one or the bigger one. I don't know. But and I think that's served me well. And the other thing, that skill I seem to have to some degree, is to be able to see dots that don't seem to go together and configure them such that it makes sense, right? No original ideas in me, but to take others and arrange them in a way that you can extract value. And I think if you combine those two things, you can learn some things. One of the things I've learned is, and I think this is something our whole sector needs to learn, is that we can be very quick to start to create and then believe our own mythologies, particularly when we're a mission-driven field and our whole value proposition is aspirational, trying to eradicate poverty, right? I mean, so, and then we have to be very intentional to make sure that's not happening to us. And one of my lessons is we have to create constructive dissonance. We have to encourage and reward people to be antithetical to whatever we think is the right answer. without undermining and being passive aggressive and construct the whole thing. Otherwise, you don't go anywhere. So it's a real delicate balance. I mean, that's one of the things I've learned for our sector. One of the things I learned about me, it's an underlying cause of a lot of my failures, has been, well, not to bore you, Lynn, but I've been working with a coach. All of my team works with a coach. And I have 4, I got a lot of gaps, but we've got 4 that we've all agreed I'm going to try to make progress on. And one of them is not trying to make it okay for everybody.
Right.
Right? One of those things as a middle child, you try to solve everyone's problem, and what ends up happening is you end up confusing people.
Right.
You know, and so I think that's caused a lot of confusion and can lead to a lot of failure as a CEO, because then people, as we mentioned, can go off and do different things. So I think one of the lessons there is, you know, be very clear about standards and expectations. Don't apologize for them, and don't try to make it better for everyone. And that's hard.
That's very hard. If you're not wired that way, that makes it's not your natural style.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So another thing I wanted to touch on is, have you had a mentor? And if so, who and what did you learn from him or her? Someone asked me, a COO of another NGO said that's what she would like to hear from people.
If they had a mentor?
If they had a mentor, and if so, what did they learn from them?
You know, I haven't really. I think I've sort of, not in the sense of like the platonic ideal of a mentor. I think what's happened in my career is I've taken pieces of people that I really respect and admire and value, and pieced together sort of a mosaic of a mentor. So one of them is an old boss of mine, actually. You know, and you know, I don't know if I can say this when you're recording. He's kind of an ass, you know, but I love him, you know, and he was so different than him. We're really good friends now. I ended up being a CEO before he ended up being a CEO last year. His name is Bruce Wilkinson. He's the head of Catholic Medical Mission Board up in New York. And you know, I took a lot of stuff from Bruce, and he's still a good friend of mine. And so that was one composite of a mentor. But there's other things that he doesn't have that I absolutely need to get better and learn and figure out. And so that had to come from somebody else. You know, so I sort of pasted together sort of a mosaic. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And that resonates with me. I think that I wonder if a lot of people do that. I hadn't thought of it that way, though.
Have you had a mentor? Have you somebody sort of walk you through your career, or
well, I mean, at different stages, yeah. Because I worked for Catholic Relief Services. Who mentored me? Some other women, because when I started, there wasn't that many women in the field. So I had some that were like 10 years older than me that helped me out, especially when I had a bad boss and I didn't know what to do about it, and so they helped me with that. And then since I've been on my own in business, yeah, I think and sometimes, like you said, it's not maybe someone that I know. Sometimes it's someone I've heard of.
Oh, really? Yeah.
You know, that they're doing things that I aspire to do, or that are groundbreaking to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting. Yeah, that's nice. That's a nice thing. One of the things that I learned, so it's not exactly a mentor, but in fact, it's happening right now. I've got somebody who reports to me who has no idea he is mentoring me, but I learn a lot from this person. And sometimes I look at what he's doing and I go, oh my gosh, where did that, how did you come up with that? Why do you see the world that way? And I'm kind of trying to learn from him, you know, and so you can get it from all places.
So the woman who asked me to ask this, who told me, I told her I was doing this, and she said this is one thing she'd like to know is what people learn from their mentors. She told me that she learns from an individual that she still works with, and she told him recently, you know, you're a mentor to me. I've just decided you were my mentor. And he was like, oh, he had no idea. So it wasn't even like a formal,
right.
My mentor will meet
right.
Tuesday at 3:30.
Right.
She decided he was her mentor, and there you go.
Yeah, there you go. It's cool.
And if you have time for one more question, what would you like your legacy to be? Do you have time?
My legacy. Boy, it's so funny because I'm not that bright. I kind of live in the moment. I wish I were more of a planner. I certainly am a planner with strategy and business planning, but sort of for me, I kind of live in the moment, which you think would be relaxing, but it's really not. But over the last year, it's sort of taken shape for me. It's not so much about legacy that I'm remembered, but something I'd like to contribute that lasts would be this idea of seeing the people we serve as shareholders who indeed own every modality of their own development, rather than us being some sort of more sophisticated or more mature, but still same expression of neo-colonialism, where we are the haves and we do to people projects that people who really wish them well, funders, want to better their lives, but what they need, how do we give them ownership of all the modalities of their own development so they can own their future? And if we can get that idea of shareholder in across our sector, I think that'll change the way we see them, the way we see how we're supposed to generate and provide value. Because I really believe one of the reasons why we have poverty and marginalization is a broken relationship with power. And by giving power to people, by making them shareholders, owners, like Warren Buffett, he's super rich, but every year he stands up on stage for 6 hours and has to answer any question one of his shareholders asks him. In a sense, they own him, right? What does that look like for us? And if we can get that in our sector, change the way we think, the way we see people, the way we design, and if we can start to infect our sector that way, I think that would be a good thing.
And that will also be a change with the stakeholders, what you're calling the stakeholders, what we used to call beneficiaries. That means they have to change their way of thinking, the way they've been maybe habituated to be successful, is the way they work with us, the way they approach us. It could be, going back to what you're saying as the business model, could shift the whole business.
Yeah, in fact, before I just got on this call with you, I was working out, we have our board meeting next week in Madagascar, and we're going to finalize what we call forming a shareholder council. And one of the things that I'm arguing with my board about is some of my board members are saying, Mark, look, I'm okay if you call them stakeholders, because everyone has a stake. I'm like, no, these are shareholders. They own a share. And we're going to quantify what that share means. And they have certain rights that are over you as board members. And to my board's credit, they're like, okay, that means as a fiduciary board, I'm giving up certain control and power to people that we serve. I'm like, yes. They're like, okay. So they're doing that. They're actually putting mechanisms in place, forming a shareholder council. So, we'll see. But I think it's one way to attack this power inequity that's at the root of a lot of stuff. And if we could get that to take off, that'd be great.
It gives me goosebumps to hear you talk like that. This is what I want for our sector. I really want this. I so hope that you're successful and you'll learn things that other successes and non-successes that will help others go behind.
Yeah, I hope so. Hope we don't blow it.
Well, even if you blow it, it's a learning.
That's right.
No, it's not bad because somebody has to go first.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Mistakes and then adjust. So there'll be nothing bad here. Tell your board I said that.
I will. I'll tell them Lynn said you can't fire me if I blow it.
Good source that I trust.
Right.
So, Mark, I thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed talking to you, and you gave me goosebumps in my head, my scalp, which is high praise. So I wish you the best of luck, and we'll be in touch. Good luck with your board meeting.
Thank you so much. It was fun talking to you, Lynn.